My mother-in-law demanded to plan my wedding, so I let her spend $25,000 before revealing I'd eloped. Valencia Hawthorne treated wedding planning like a military operation. The moment Garrett slipped the ring on my finger, she appeared with color-coded binders and a spreadsheet that could have run NASA. "The Hawthorne family has standards," she declared, flipping through venue photos like a general reviewing battle plans. "This wedding will be talked about for decades." I suggested something small and intimate. She looked at me like I'd suggested we get married in a McDonald's bathroom. "Nonsense. We're booking the Grandview Mansion. Spring wedding. 500 guests minimum. I have a reputation to maintain." The planning consumed her entirely. She scheduled appointments without consulting me, booked vendors based on price tags rather than preference, and dismissed every suggestion I made with a patronizing smile. "You're so young, sweetie. You don't understand what makes a wedding elegant." The budget exploded immediately. Hand-engraved invitations on Italian paper, $3,200. Crystal chandeliers for the reception, $4,800. A dress she selected without my input, $5,500. Each expense came with lectures about family legacy and social expectations. "This is an investment in your future standing in society," she'd explain while writing another enormous check. Meanwhile, Garrett and I grew increasingly frustrated, watching her orchestrate what felt more like a corporate merger than a celebration of love. We wanted something personal, not a performance. 4 months into her planning obsession, while she was booking a $7,000 ice sculpture shaped like swans, Garrett and I made a spontaneous decision. We drove to the courthouse on a Thursday afternoon with my sister and his best friend as witnesses. We exchanged simple bands and promised forever, while Valencia was probably arguing with florists about centerpiece height requirements. I let her continue planning for 8 more weeks. The final total reached exactly $25,000. She'd booked everything from a celebrity chef to bathroom attendants to a horse-drawn carriage for my grand entrance. 3 days before her elaborate production, I invited both families for what I called a final wedding briefing. Valencia arrived with laminated schedules, emergency protocols, and detailed instructions for every family member's role in her masterpiece. "Before we review tomorrow's timeline," I announced, placing my phone on the dining table, "I have something important to share with everyone." I displayed our marriage certificate, dated 10 weeks earlier. The silence stretched for what felt like hours. Valencia stared at the document, her face transforming from confusion to rage, to something much more dangerous. "You're already married?" she whispered, her voice deadly calm. "For 2.5 months now," Garrett confirmed, taking my hand protectively. Her carefully maintained composure shattered completely. "You manipulative little snake. Do you realize what you've done to me?" "I realize I got married to the man I love," I replied steadily. "Everything else was your choice." She stood slowly, gathering her purse with trembling hands. $25,000. Gone, because of your deception. "Actually," I said, sliding a thick folder across the table, "I documented every expense. Here are copies of all receipts, contracts, and payment confirmations." Valencia opened the folder, scanning vendor agreements and credit card statements with growing horror. "This was planned," she hissed. "You orchestrated this humiliation deliberately." "I orchestrated getting married," I corrected. "You orchestrated everything else without asking what we actually wanted." She pulled out her phone with shaking fingers and dialed a number. "Detective Rodriguez, this is Valencia Hawthorne. I need to report a major fraud case. $25,000. I watched her pace to the corner, speaking in urgent whispers. My father-in-law, Franklin, silent throughout this exchange, finally cleared his throat. "Valencia," he said quietly. "Hang up the phone." She spun around, fury blazing. "Absolutely not. They've stolen from us, Franklin. This is criminal behavior." "No," he said, his voice gaining strength. "What's criminal is spending our money without discussing it with anyone, including me." For the first time in 32 years of marriage, Franklin had contradicted his wife publicly. Valencia's mouth fell open. Detective Rodriguez's tinny voice came through her speaker, loud enough for everyone to hear. "Ma'am, spending your own money on a party that doesn't happen isn't fraud. It's poor planning." She hung up and whirled back to face us. "This isn't over. I'll sue you for emotional distress." "Valencia." My mother's voice cut through the threat like a blade. "Stop." Mom pulled out her phone and began scrolling. "You want to talk about emotional distress? Let's discuss how you've treated my daughter for 6 months." She read from her notes. October 15th, you told vendors that the bride's family couldn't afford to contribute meaningfully. November 3rd, you suggested my daughter's education was adequate for someone from our background. Valencia's face went white. "I never said." "I have witnesses," Mom said simply. "And screenshots." Dad, a retired judge, leaned back with his courtroom expression. "In all this talk of fraud, nobody's mentioned that you signed contracts using our children's names without authorization." The implications hit Valencia like a physical blow. Franklin was nodding slowly. "He's right. You forged our son's signature on at least 4 contracts." "I was helping." "You were committing forgery," Dad said matter-of-factly. Valencia sank into her chair, the fight suddenly gone. But I wasn't finished. "There's something else you all need to know," I said, reaching for another folder. I spread out bank statements and credit reports. "While you were spending $25,000 on a wedding, Garrett and I discovered some interesting things about the family finances." Franklin leaned forward, suddenly alert. "What kind of things?" 3 home equity loans in the past 18 months. Total debt, $847,000. The number hung in the air like a bomb. Franklin's face went ashen. That's impossible. I would have had to sign. You did sign, I said, sliding over documents. But look at the dates. He examined them with growing horror. These signatures, I don't remember, because you were in the hospital after your heart attack. Valencia brought you papers, told you they were insurance forms. Franklin stared at his wife with complete betrayal. You took out loans while I was sedated? Valencia's defense crumbled. It was for the family. The business needed capital. What business? We sold the company 2 years ago. That's when the real story emerged. Valencia had been maintaining the illusion of wealth long after their actual situation deteriorated. The family business had been sold to cover previous debts. The elegant apartment was mortgaged to the maximum. The investment portfolio? Franklin asked weakly. Fake statements, I confirmed. She's been creating them on her computer. Valencia had stolen $67,000 meant for investments, spending it on charity galas and country club memberships to maintain her social standing. I needed you to stop worrying about money, she told Franklin desperately. I was investing in our social capital. Franklin stood abruptly. 32 years of marriage, and I'm just now seeing who you really are. Penelope, Garrett's younger sister, had been silent throughout. Now she spoke up. I'm moving out tonight, and I'm contesting every signature you forged with my name. Me too, Garrett said. We're hiring lawyers tomorrow. Valencia's mask finally slipped completely. You're all ungrateful. I've sacrificed everything to give this family class and status. Whose status? I interrupted. You've humiliated yourself, committed multiple felonies, and destroyed your relationships with your husband and children. You did this, she hissed, pointing at me. No, I said calmly. I got married. Everything else was your choice. Franklin walked to the window, staring at the garden he'd cultivated. When he turned back, his expression was resolved. I want a divorce. Even Valencia looked shocked. Valencia, you've committed crimes against our children. You've destroyed our financial security. You've lied repeatedly about major decisions. He paused, gathering strength. And tonight, when confronted with consequences, your first instinct was to call police about a crime that didn't exist. Penelope stood and took her father's arm. Dad, you can stay with me tonight. We'll figure this out together, Garrett added. Valencia looked around at her family, all united against her, finally grasping what she'd lost. I can fix this, she said desperately. Just give me a chance. You had chances, Franklin said gently. Every day for months you had chances to be honest, to include us in decisions, to treat your daughter-in-law with respect. He collected his coat. I'll be back tomorrow with a lawyer. As they filed out, Valencia called out one last time. You'll regret this. When you see how hard life is without the connections I've built. I turned back to look at her, sitting alone in the dining room she'd decorated with furniture she couldn't afford. Valencia, I said quietly, we never wanted your status. We just wanted your acceptance. 6 months later, the wreckage was still being sorted. Franklin filed for divorce. The house was in foreclosure. Penelope moved across the country for graduate school, using distance to establish financial independence. Valencia declared bankruptcy and moved in with her sister in Ohio. The wedding vendors had been surprisingly understanding. The caterer refunded half the deposit. The florist donated arrangements to nursing homes. Only the dress shop refused accommodation, suggesting I should have controlled my family better. I left them a detailed online review explaining exactly what happened. Other customers began sharing stories about pushy relatives and unsupportive vendors. The shop closed 3 months later. Detective Rodriguez actually called me weeks later, laughing about Valencia's continued attempts to report our crimes. She tried to convince me you'd forged your own marriage certificate, he said, as if the courthouse was part of some conspiracy. The most surprising outcome was my relationship with Penelope. Before the disaster, we'd been polite but distant. Watching her stand up to Valencia revealed strength I'd never seen. I'm poor, but I'm free, she told me during a video call from Oregon. And it turns out I really like being poor and free. She'd started a blog about financial recovery that gained surprising following. Other children of financially irresponsible parents shared their stories. Mom always talked about social standing as something we inherited, Penelope observed. But I have better networking now than when she was buying our way into circles. Garrett took longer to process everything. He struggled with guilt over his mother's behavior and sadness over his parents' divorce. I keep thinking I should have seen it sooner, he'd say. You weren't raised to question your mother's judgment, I replied. That's not your fault. His relationship with Franklin grew stronger than ever. I'm getting to know my dad as a person instead of just my mother's husband, he explained. Franklin, meanwhile, discovered happiness he'd forgotten existed. He sold his remaining assets, settled legitimate debts, and bought a cottage near the ocean. I should have done this 20 years ago, he told us over dinner. I couldn't see past the life she'd convinced me we needed. He was learning to cook, taking art classes, and dating a retired teacher who drove a 15-year-old Honda and thought expensive restaurants were wasteful. She makes me laugh, he said simply. I'd forgotten what that felt like. A year after our courthouse wedding, we celebrated our anniversary properly. We invited Franklin and his girlfriend, Penelope, my parents, my sister, and close friends to Franklin's backyard. The total cost was $300. We grilled burgers, played games, and told stories. To new traditions, Franklin toasted. To authentic relationships, Dad added. To choosing your own path, Penelope contributed. To families you create instead of inherit, Mom said. Garrett and I looked at our chosen family, people who'd become our real support system, to learning that the best weddings focus on the marriage, I concluded. 3 years later, we received an unexpected visitor. Valencia stepped out of an old Honda, looking smaller and older than I remembered. She wore simple clothes, her hair in a ponytail, no designer armor. I know I should have called, she said quietly, but I was afraid you'd say no. Garrett appeared in the doorway, his face cycling through emotions before settling on cautious neutrality. Can we talk? Just for a few minutes? We sat on the porch. She declined iced tea. I've been in therapy, she began. Real therapy. I've been diagnosed with narcissistic personality disorder and pathological spending disorder. She reached into her purse and pulled out folded paper. I've been working on this for 6 months. A complete accounting of every financial decision that affected your lives. The list was several pages long, handwritten carefully. I'm also paying back what I can. I work retail in Ohio, sending money monthly to everyone I defrauded. It'll take years, but I'm committed. She looked directly at me. I owe you the biggest apology. I treated you terribly because I saw you as a threat to my control over Garrett. I was wrong. Thank you, I said simply. She turned to Garrett. I stole your autonomy and financial security. I made decisions for your life without consent. I'm sorry. Valencia stood up. That's all I came to say. I'm not asking for relationship or contact. I needed you to know I understand what I did wrong. She paused at the porch steps. For what it's worth, I think you made the right choice, both in marrying how you wanted and in cutting me from your lives. You have a beautiful life together. I'm sorry I tried to make it about me. After she drove away, Garrett and I sat in silence. How do you feel? I asked. Confused, he admitted. She seemed different, smaller, more real. Do you think she's changed? Maybe, but that doesn't mean we have to let her back into our lives. We learned later through Penelope that Valencia had remarried to her former therapist, another person in recovery. She was working minimum wage, living modestly, but seemed genuinely calmer. She's like the mom I wanted but never had, Penelope said during one of their cautious video calls. She asks about my life instead of managing it. When our daughter Isabella was born, we created the family structure we'd consciously chosen after escaping Valencia's manipulation. Franklin and Ruth visited monthly, always calling first. My parents maintained weekly video calls. Penelope sent thoughtful packages for every milestone. Friends rallied with meal trains and babysitting. This is what family is supposed to look like, Garrett observed when Isabella was 6 months old. Everyone wanted what was best for Isabella, not what made them feel important. When Isabella started asking questions about family structure in kindergarten, we were prepared. Why don't I have a grandma on Daddy's side? Daddy's mommy made choices that hurt people, I explained carefully, so she doesn't get to be part of our family right now. Will she ever be? Maybe someday. But first she has to learn better choices, and we have to make sure you're safe. Isabella understood that some adults make choices affecting their ability to be in families. She wasn't confused or distressed by her paternal grandmother's absence. When Isabella turned 8, she asked to read the letter Valencia had written for her years earlier. My dear Isabella, it began, I am your father's mother, which makes me your grandmother. I cannot be part of your life because I made bad choices that hurt your father and others. This has nothing to do with you. You are perfect exactly as you are, and you deserve to grow up in a safe, happy family. Your parents are protecting you by keeping me away. I think about you often and hope you are learning and growing. I hope you know how much you are loved by the people who take care of you every day. Someday, if I can prove I've learned better choices, maybe we'll meet. But if that never happens, I want you to know that I love you and I'm proud of your parents for putting your well-being first. Isabella read it twice, then looked up. She sounds sad. She probably is, Garrett agreed. It's hard when your choices mean you can't be with people you love. But she understands why you protect me? Yes, she does. Isabella folded the letter carefully. Can I write her back? We were surprised by the request. After consulting our therapist, we let Isabella craft a brief response. Dear Grandmother Valencia, thank you for the letter. I am happy and safe and love my family very much. I hope you are getting better and not too sad. I hope someday you can make good choices. I am not angry at you. I understand that grown-ups sometimes have problems that make it hard to be good family members. Love, Isabella. We sent it through Penelope, who delivered it via Valencia's therapist. The response was a photo of Valencia in her Target uniform, smiling genuinely. On the back, thank you for the letter. I am working hard every day to be someone worthy of your kindness. No return address. No request for more correspondence. Just acknowledgement and gratitude. When Isabella turned 12, she surprised us at dinner. I want to meet Grandmother Valencia. What's prompting that? I asked carefully. My friend Sophia met her biological father for the first time. She said it was awkward, but good. It answered questions she didn't know she had. What questions do you have? I want to see if she seems like the person in her letters. And I want her to see that I turned out okay even though she couldn't help raise me. That's a big decision, Garrett said. I want it somewhere public, with you guys there, for like an hour, not a whole day. What would you hope to get out of it? I want to know if she's actually sorry or just saying what people want to hear. How would you tell the difference? By how she acts with you guys, Isabella said with surprising insight. If she's really changed, she won't try to manipulate you into giving her more access to me. 3 months later, we sat in a neutral restaurant waiting for Valencia. When she walked in, I almost didn't recognize her. Smaller, grayer, dressed simply. She moved tentatively, without the commanding presence that used to fill rooms. "Hello," she said quietly when she reached us. "You must be Isabella." "Hello, Grandmother Valencia," Isabella replied politely. Valencia's eyes filled with tears, but she blinked them back. "Thank you for wanting to meet me, and thank you," she said to us, "for allowing this." The conversation was remarkably natural. Isabella asked about Valencia's work. Valencia asked about school. They discovered shared love of reading. Valencia didn't ask probing questions or make comments about missed time. She followed Isabella's lead completely. "Do you like living with your new husband?" Isabella asked with childhood directness. "I do. He's very kind, and he helps me remember to make good choices." "Are you good at making good choices with help?" "I'm getting better. It takes practice." When Isabella excused herself for the restroom, Valencia turned to us with profound gratitude. "She's wonderful. You've done an amazing job raising her. I don't expect this to change anything," she continued quickly. "I don't want you to think I'm using this meeting to ask for more access. I just wanted to see her once, to know she's okay." When Isabella returned, Valencia stood up. "I should go. I don't want to overstay my welcome." "Already?" Isabella looked disappointed. "Your parents were generous to allow me this time. I want to respect their rules." Isabella hugged her. A quick, polite hug that Valencia received with visible restraint. On the drive home, Isabella was quiet. "What did you think?" I asked. She seemed sad but not scary. "And she didn't try to make you guys feel bad for keeping her away. Any regrets about meeting her?" "No. I'm glad I know what she looks like. And I'm glad she knows I'm okay. Do you want to see her again?" Isabella considered seriously. "Maybe in a few years, when I'm older and can make my own decisions about relationships. I understand now why you had to keep her away when I was little," she said eventually. "She's not mean or evil, but she's fragile. Like she might make bad choices if things got complicated. I can handle talking to her for an hour in a restaurant, but I wouldn't want her babysitting me or being responsible for me." Isabella had reached the same conclusion we had, that love alone isn't enough to make someone safe and reliable. The meeting became a turning point, but not how we'd expected. Instead of opening the door to relationship, it closed the door on uncertainty. Isabella had satisfied her curiosity and confirmed our judgment about Valencia's limitations. She no longer wondered what she might be missing. "She's a real person now instead of a mystery," Isabella explained later. "And she's exactly the kind of person you wouldn't want to leave a kid with. Not because she's mean, but because she can't be trusted to put someone else's needs first." Over the following years, Isabella sent Valencia birthday cards. Simple, friendly greetings that acknowledged connection without encouraging deeper contact. When Isabella graduated high school as valedictorian, she sent Valencia a photo and graduation speech copy. "I want her to see that I turned out well, not because of anything she did, but because it might make her feel less sad." Valencia's response: "I am so proud of the young woman you've become. No request for photos. No invitation demands. No attempt to claim credit. She's learned to celebrate my achievements without trying to be part of them," Isabella said. "That's probably the healthiest relationship we could have." When Isabella got engaged at 25, she asked our opinion about inviting Valencia to the wedding. "It's your day," Garrett said. "What would you hope to gain?" "I want her to see that I've learned to choose good people. And I want Marcus to meet the grandmother who couldn't raise me, but still loves me." Valencia attended, sitting in the back row with David. Simple dress, arrived on time, left immediately after the ceremony without approaching the receiving line. Her note, the following week: "Your wedding was perfect, joyful, authentic, and full of love. Thank you for including me. Seeing you surrounded by people who love and support you was the greatest gift." She got it exactly right, Isabella said. Present but not intrusive, grateful but not demanding. When Isabella and Marcus had their daughter Hope, they sent Valencia a birth announcement along with other extended family. Valencia's response: "Congratulations on Hope's arrival. She's beautiful and blessed to have wonderful parents." No visit requests, no offers to help, no attempts to establish active grandmother status. "She's learned that loving someone means wanting what's best for them, even if that doesn't include you," Isabella observed. Isabella plans to handle Hope's eventual questions about Valencia the same way we handled hers, through honest, age-appropriate conversations emphasizing family choice and personal safety. Hope will know she has a great grandmother who loves her but can't be part of daily life. And when she's curious, we'll handle that just like you handled my curiosity. Looking at the life we've built, the relationships we've chosen, the boundaries we've maintained, the love we've cultivated, Garrett's recent observation rings true. The wedding disaster was the best thing that ever happened to us. It taught us that we could choose our own path. Valencia's $25,000 wedding disaster led to discoveries that changed everything: financial fraud, emotional manipulation, and her fundamental inability to prioritize others' well-being over her own desires. But it also led to growth, healing, and creation of a family structure based on mutual respect rather than obligation or control. All of us learned that family is something you create through choices, not inherit through circumstances. The courthouse wedding we chose cost $40 and lasted 15 minutes. It was perfect because it was ours. The life we built afterward, choosing our traditions, setting our boundaries, creating our definition of family, has been perfect because it's ours too. Sometimes the most important word you can learn is no. Sometimes the most important thing you can learn is walking away from people who love you but can't love you safely. Valencia's $25,000 wedding taught us both lessons. It was worth every penny she spent. My mother-in-law insisted on planning our baby shower, but her guest list revealed a secret that ended our marriage. When Brendan and I announced we were expecting our first child, his mother Vivian immediately swooped in like a perfectly coiffed vulture. "Darling, you just focus on growing that precious baby," she said, placing her manicured hand on my barely there bump. "Let me handle everything else." At first, I was grateful. Between morning sickness and my demanding job at the marketing firm, I barely had energy to brush my teeth, let alone plan a party. Vivian seemed genuinely excited about her first grandchild, but something felt off when she insisted on handling the invitations herself. "It's a surprise, sweetie. Trust me, I know exactly who needs to be there," she'd say whenever I asked about the guest list. Every time I offered to help with addresses or suggest friends to invite, she'd wave me off with that practiced smile. Brendan thought it was sweet. "Mom just wants everything perfect for her first grandchild," he said. "Let her have this." The shower was scheduled for Saturday afternoon at Vivian's prestigious country club. She'd rented the entire garden pavilion, complete with a 3-tier cake and enough pink decorations to blind someone. Everything was beautiful. Too beautiful, actually. Like she was trying to impress someone specific. That morning, my phone started buzzing with confused texts from friends. "Hey, did I miss something? When's your shower?" My college roommate Jessica wrote. "I thought we were close. Congratulations anyway," texted my work friend Maria. My stomach twisted. I called Vivian immediately. "Oh, honey, space was limited at the club," she said smoothly. I had to prioritize family and Brendan's important business connections. Important business connections? For a baby shower? When we arrived at the club, I felt like I'd walked into someone else's party. I recognized exactly 3 people: my mom, my sister Rebecca, and Brendan's Aunt Helen. The other 25 guests were complete strangers to me. Well-dressed women in their late 20s to early 30s, all impeccably styled, all blonde, all stealing glances in my direction. "Who are all these people?" I whispered to Brendan. He looked just as confused. "I thought they were your friends. Mom said she'd invited your social circle." During the gift opening ceremony, I noticed something odd. Every single present had a card signed with unfamiliar names: Delilah, Cassandra, Rochelle, Lauren, Tiffany. But the handwriting on all of them looked identical. The same looping cursive, the same black ink pen. Someone had written all these cards themselves. That's when a woman with platinum blonde hair approached me. She wore a designer dress that probably cost more than my monthly rent. "Congratulations, dear," she said with a smile that didn't reach her eyes. "I'm Delilah Morrison. We have so much to catch up on." "I'm sorry, have we met?" I asked. Her smile faltered. "Brendan never mentioned me? That's interesting." Before I could respond, another woman joined us, a redhead with dark roots. "This is incredibly awkward," she said flatly. "He told us you knew about everything." My blood ran cold. "Knew what?" I managed to ask. The blonde woman, Delilah, exchanged a meaningful look with her friend. "About the support group, sweetheart." "What support group?" "The one for Brendan's other women," she said matter-of-factly. Vivian started it after wife number 2 couldn't handle the transition. The world tilted sideways. Wife number 2? That's when I really looked around the pavilion and realized what I was seeing. 25 women, all blonde or recently blonde, all around my age, all watching me with a mixture of pity, recognition, and something that looked like relief. "You're wife number 4, the redhead said gently. "I'm Cassandra Hayes, wife number 3, divorced 8 months ago when I found out about the others." My legs nearly gave out. I grabbed the back of a chair to steady myself. "4 wives?" I whispered. "That we know of," Delilah said. "There might be more who haven't found our little support network yet." I looked around desperately for Brendan. He was across the pavilion, deep in conversation with his mother, completely oblivious to the bomb being dropped on his pregnant wife. "The first wife was Tiffany Chen," Cassandra explained. "Married right out of college. She lasted 2 years before she found out about Lauren." "Lauren Martinez was the second," added another woman. "That's when Vivian started the support group." My hand instinctively went to my stomach. "I'm 4 months pregnant." The women exchanged knowing looks. "So was Lauren when she found out about me," Delilah said softly. "And I was 5 months pregnant when I discovered Cassandra existed." "What happened to the babies?" I asked, dreading the answer. "Miscarriage from the stress," Delilah said, her voice flat with old pain. "The doctors said it was the shock and emotional trauma. Cassandra wasn't so lucky, or unlucky, depending on how you look at it." Cassandra pulled out her phone and showed me a picture of a beautiful little girl with curly blonde hair and Brendan's unmistakable green eyes. "Emma just turned 3 last month. Brendan hasn't seen her since our divorce was finalized. Vivian sends money sometimes. Guilt payments, I call them. But she's made it very clear that I'm not welcome in their family anymore." The pieces of my life started falling apart like a house of cards. Brendan's frequent business trips that seemed to have no clear purpose. The way he guarded his phone like it contained state secrets. How he'd convinced me to move across the country from my family in Oregon, saying his business opportunities were better here in Chicago. "He's still legally married to Lauren," another woman said quietly. She was tiny and looked exhausted, with dark circles under her eyes. "I'm Rochelle Kim. Their divorce was never finalized. Something about paperwork complications that Brendan kept creating." The ground beneath me shifted. "That means our marriage isn't even legal." "None of ours were," Delilah confirmed grimly, "except Tiffany's. She was the only legitimate wife. The rest of us were just Accessories. I felt physically sick. How long has this been going on? 12 years, Cassandra said. Since he graduated college. Vivian keeps track of all of us in a little leather notebook she carries in her purse. She calls it her daughter-in-law management system, like we're inventory to be tracked. She invited us here to meet you, Delilah explained, to officially welcome you to the sisterhood of Brendan's victims. She does this every time he gets a new woman pregnant. It's her twisted idea of transparency. Why didn't anyone try to warn me before this? I asked. We tried, Rochelle said earnestly. Remember the woman who approached you at the Whole Foods 3 months ago? That was me. I remembered now. A frantic-looking woman had cornered me in the produce section, insisting she knew my husband. I'd assumed she was some jealous ex-girlfriend and had hurried away. And the anonymous letter you received 2 months ago? Cassandra added. That was me. The letter. I'd thought it was from some bitter ex trying to ruin my happiness. It had contained vague warnings about Brendan's character and a phone number to call. I'd shredded it without a second thought. We have a whole system now, Delilah explained, pulling out her phone to show me a group chat. We try to reach the new ones before it's too late. But Brendan's gotten smarter about keeping his women isolated. Vivian coordinates everything, Cassandra continued. She helps him scout new targets, usually through her charity work or social club activities. Young women, preferably with no close family nearby, Rochelle listed. Blonde, educated, financially independent, but not wealthy enough to be suspicious of his lifestyle. I fit the profile perfectly. I'd moved to Chicago for what I thought was a dream job, leaving my parents and sister back in Oregon. I'd met Brendan at one of Vivian's charity galas, where she'd introduced us with glowing praise. The pregnancy was planned, I realized aloud. He wanted me pregnant. Pregnant women are less likely to leave, Delilah said sadly. And Vivian is obsessed with babies. She's desperate for grandchildren to spoil and show off. What about all the other children? I asked. 7 total, including yours, Cassandra said, pulling out what looked like a handwritten family tree. Emma's the oldest at 3. Then there's Michael, who's 2.5. He lives with Lauren's parents in Arizona since she had a complete breakdown. Twins Samuel and Grace are with their aunt in Florida after wife number 2, Jennifer Walsh, was hospitalized for severe depression. And Rochelle has 18-month-old twins, Oliver and Sophia, 7 children, all with different mothers, all being raised without their father because he was too busy collecting new wives to care for the families he'd already created. My sister Rebecca appeared at my side, having noticed my distressed state. What's going on? She asked, eyeing the circle of blonde women with growing alarm. These are Brendan's other wives, I said numbly. Rebecca's face went completely white. Other wives? What do you mean, other wives? Before anyone could explain further, Brendan finally noticed our gathering. I watched his face change when he saw exactly who I was talking to. The color drained from his cheeks, and he started walking toward us with quick, determined steps. Ladies, he said with forced cheerfulness when he reached us, I see you've all met my beautiful wife. Which wife would that be exactly? Delilah asked coolly. Brendan's jaw tightened. Mom mentioned she'd invited a few old friends to the shower. I didn't realize you'd all be here together. Surprise, Cassandra said dryly. We brought gifts. She handed me a thick manila envelope. Inside were photocopies of marriage certificates, divorce papers, birth certificates, hospital records, and court documents. A complete paper trail of Brendan's 12-year pattern of deception. The private investigator we hired put this together, she explained while Brendan tried to grab the envelope. Every woman deserves to know exactly what she's dealing with. Brendan managed to snatch some papers, but Rebecca quickly stepped between us. Don't you dare touch her, she warned. This is absolutely ridiculous, Brendan said, his facade finally cracking. These women are bitter and jealous because they couldn't handle sharing me with my business responsibilities. Moved on? Rochelle laughed bitterly. You're still sending me court-ordered child support for twins you've never bothered to meet. You've never even asked their names. Vivian appeared beside her son like she'd been summoned, her face tight with annoyance. Girls, please don't make a scene, she said sharply. This is supposed to be a joyful celebration. A celebration of what? I asked, finding my voice. Your son's 4th bigamous marriage? Now, dear, bigamy is such a harsh legal term, Vivian said dismissively. Brendan is simply a man who loves deeply. Some people are meant to have expansive hearts. Love? Delilah scoffed. Your son is a serial predator who uses you to enable his behavior. Vivian's composure cracked slightly. I've tried to make amends. The support group, the monthly checks, helping with legal fees. You help him find new victims, Cassandra interrupted. You scout them at your charity events and social clubs. You research their backgrounds to make sure they fit his preferred profile. The other shower guests had started to notice the commotion. Several elderly women in expensive jewelry were whispering and pointing. My mom and Brendan's Aunt Helen approached with confusion and growing concern. What in the world is happening here? My mother asked. I'm finding out that my marriage isn't legal, I said, my voice cracking. And I'm pregnant with a child whose father already has 7 other children with different women that he doesn't support. My mother's face went through several emotions before settling on pure rage. She turned to Brendan with fire in her eyes. You lying, manipulative son of a bitch, she said with deadly calm. How could you do this to my daughter? How could you look me in the eye at family dinners and pretend to be a loving husband? Mrs. Patterson, please calm down, Brendan said desperately. There's been a serious misunderstanding here. The only misunderstanding, my mother cut him off, is thinking you could get away with this forever. Did you really believe none of these women would ever find each other? I looked around at the faces surrounding me, the other wives, watching with sympathy and solidarity, my family radiating protective anger, the country club guests, whispering and taking pictures, and at the center, Brendan and Vivian finally caught in their web of lies. I want to go home, I said quietly. Of course, sweetheart, Rebecca said, putting her arm around me. Let's get you out of here. As we gathered my things, Delilah pressed a business card into my hand. We meet every Thursday evening at 7, she said quietly. Coffee shop on 5th Street called Grounded. You don't have to go through this alone. I nodded, unable to speak through the tears. What about all the lovely gifts? Vivian called after us as if baby shower presents were the priority. Keep them, I said without turning around. Consider them payment for the criminal defense attorney I'm about to hire. The drive back to his downtown apartment was a blur of tears, phone calls, and planning. Rebecca drove while talking to our dad, who immediately started looking up flights. My mother called her attorney friend for referrals. Everyone sprang into action while I sat in shocked silence, processing the magnitude of Brendan's deception. The apartment felt different when we walked in. The photos on the walls of our happy life together now looked like evidence in a crime scene. The nursery we'd been preparing felt like a monument to my naivety. Rebecca helped me pack while we waited for my parents. She found Brendan's home office unlocked and discovered a filing cabinet full of disturbing documents. Bank accounts I'd never heard of. Life insurance policies on women I now knew were his other wives. A detailed calendar system tracking when each woman was ovulating. This is so much worse than just bigamy, Rebecca said, photographing everything. This is systematic fraud and possibly identity theft. That evening, as I sat in a hotel room near the airport with my family, Brendan came looking for me. Hotel security footage would later show him pacing in the lobby for hours, making increasingly frantic phone calls. He finally got through to my phone around midnight. We need to talk, he said, desperation and anger in his voice. I think we're past talking, I replied, not looking up from the legal documents. Unless you want to explain how you married 4 different women while only divorcing one. Those women poisoned you against me, he said, launching into what sounded rehearsed. They're bitter because they couldn't handle the complexity of loving someone like me. I have a big heart, and they couldn't understand that love doesn't have to be possessive. Love? I laughed without humor. Brendan, you committed fraud. Multiple times. This isn't about free love. You're a criminal who lies to women to get them pregnant and then abandons them. I never abandoned anyone, he protested. I provide financial support. I make sure everyone is taken care of. When's the last time you saw Emma? Or Michael? Or any of the twins? I asked. When's the last time you changed a diaper or stayed up all night with a sick child? He had no answer. You don't love us, I continued, my voice getting stronger. You collect us. Like trophies or vintage cars. Something to possess and show off when convenient, then store away when you're busy with the next acquisition. And your mother helps because she's addicted to playing grandmother to children whose mothers you systematically destroy. The line went quiet. I love you, he said finally, his voice small. I love all of you. I know that's hard to understand, but my capacity for love is just bigger than most people's. Your capacity for love might be big, I said, surprised by my calm tone, but your capacity for responsibility is non-existent. Love isn't just a feeling, Brendan. It's a commitment. It's showing up every day, especially when it's hard. You've never done that for anyone. 3 months later, I was back home in Oregon, living with my parents while working with attorneys to untangle the legal nightmare Brendan had created. The divorce was complicated by the invalid marriage, but there were still custody and child support issues for the baby. I joined the Thursday evening support group via video call from my childhood bedroom. There was something deeply healing about talking to women who understood exactly what I'd been through. We shared resources, legal advice, childcare strategies, and most importantly, the truth that none of us were to blame. Delilah had become our group leader over the years. She'd been tracking Brendan's patterns the longest, and had developed an extensive system for warning new targets. They'd successfully intervened in 3 potential relationships since my shower, probably saving those women years of trauma. He's getting increasingly sloppy, Delilah reported during one weekly call. Vivian's frustrated that her recruitment system isn't working anymore. Word is getting out in their social circles, and several charity organizations have quietly removed her from their boards. The support group had also connected with wives we hadn't known about. 2 more women came forward after seeing news coverage. The total count was now 6 wives and 9 children, with more potentially undiscovered. During our meetings, I learned the full scope of what Brendan and Vivian had been doing. They'd developed an intricate system over 12 years, with Vivian serving as talent scout, relationship coordinator, and damage control specialist. Tiffany, the first wife, shared her story during one particularly emotional session. I thought I was going crazy, she said. Brendan would disappear for days, claiming business trips, then come back with elaborate explanations. When I found women's clothing that wasn't mine in our closet, he convinced me I was having memory problems from stress. Lauren, wife number 2, had been recruited through Vivian's book club. She befriended me for months before introducing Brendan, Lauren explained. She knew I'd just moved to town for work, had no local support system, and was struggling financially. She positioned Brendan as this successful businessman who could provide stability. The pattern was always the same. Vivian would identify vulnerable women, usually recent transplants to Chicago, financially independent but not wealthy, typically working in creative or service fields where irregular schedules seemed normal. She'd cultivate friendships through her various social activities, learning about their backgrounds, family situations, and emotional vulnerabilities. Then she'd engineer a chance meeting with Brendan at one of her events. He'd sweep them off their feet with lavish attention, expensive gifts, and promises of a perfect future together. The relationship would move quickly, usually engagement within 6 months and marriage within a year. He's incredibly convincing, Jennifer, wife number 2, shared during one call. He makes you feel like you're the most important person in the world. He remembers every detail you tell him, surprises you with thoughtful gestures, introduces you to his successful friends. By the time you're married, you're completely dependent on him emotionally and often financially. The pregnancies were always planned, though the women didn't realize it at the time. Brendan would sabotage birth control or pressure for children with talk about how much he wanted to start a family. Once pregnant, the women were effectively trapped, emotionally invested, financially dependent, and isolated from their original support systems. I had terrible morning sickness with the twins, Rochelle shared. Brendan hired a housekeeper and convinced me to quit my job to focus on my health. I thought he was being supportive, but really he was making sure I couldn't leave easily. Vivian's role was crucial in maintaining the deception. She managed Brendan's complicated schedule, ensuring wives rarely crossed paths. She handled much of the financial coordination, managing separate bank accounts, paying bills, even managing some of the women's personal finances to reduce their stress. She had spreadsheets, Cassandra revealed, detailed charts tracking our cycles, our schedules, our emotional states. She knew which of us were having problems with Brendan and would adjust his availability accordingly. When marriages started falling apart, usually when wives discovered evidence of other women, Vivian would spring into damage control mode. She'd gaslight the wives, suggesting they were imagining things or misunderstanding innocent situations. She'd offer therapy recommendations, therapists she'd vetted to support her narrative, and increase her emotional manipulation. She convinced me I was having postpartum depression, Jennifer said. She said my suspicions about Brendan were symptoms of my condition and that I needed to focus on getting well for my children's sake. If wives became too suspicious or discovered concrete evidence, Vivian would shift to her support group strategy. She'd gradually introduce them to other former girlfriends who'd learned to accept Brendan's complex emotional needs. The idea was to normalize the situation and create a sense of sisterhood among the women. The first time I met Lauren, Vivian presented it as therapy, Delilah explained. She said Lauren had gone through similar jealousy issues and could help me work through my insecurities about Brendan's female friends. Some women bought into this narrative, especially those who were pregnant or had young children and felt trapped. But others, like Cassandra and Delilah, saw through the manipulation and began documenting evidence for legal action. That's when Vivian would get nasty, Cassandra said. She'd threaten custody battles, claim we were unfit mothers, say Brendan would fight for full custody if we tried to leave. She had lawyers on retainer who specialized in intimidating vulnerable women. The breaking point for many wives came when they realized the scope of Brendan's deception, not just multiple relationships, but the financial fraud, forged documents, and identity theft that supported his lifestyle. He had credit cards in my name that I never applied for, Lauren discovered. He'd been using my social security number to open accounts and take out loans. When I left him, my credit was destroyed. 6 months after the shower, I gave birth to Hope in a Portland hospital surrounded by my real family. Brendan appeared with flowers and tears, but I'd already filed restraining orders. I'll change, he promised through the glass of the NICU. I'll divorce the others properly. We can be a real family. You had 9 chances to be a real father, I told him. Hope makes 10. I'm not interested in giving you an 11th opportunity. Security escorted him out, and he never returned. Vivian tried a different approach, hiring expensive attorneys to demand grandparents' rights. But when the judge reviewed evidence of her active role in Brendan's deception, including testimony from 6 mothers and phone records showing her coordination of his activities, he dismissed her petition entirely. Mrs. Hartwell, the judge said, disgust clear in his voice, your enabling of your son's fraudulent and emotionally abusive behavior has caused immeasurable harm to multiple families and children. Until you demonstrate genuine accountability and seek appropriate mental health treatment, this court will not grant you access to any of his children. The Thursday group celebrated that victory with takeout and champagne. It was the first time any of us had seen real legal consequences for what they'd done. 2 years later, I've built a genuine life with Hope in Oregon. She's beautiful and brilliant, with her father's green eyes but none of his capacity for deception. I work remotely for a sustainable fashion company, which gives me flexibility to be present for her in ways Brendan never was for any of his children. My parents have been incredible, providing not just financial support, but emotional healing. Watching my father read bedtime stories to Hope and seeing my mother teach her to bake cookies has shown me what real, unconditional family love looks like. The Thursday group continues meeting, now with 12 members as more women have come forward. We've become genuine friends, united by our shared experience, but no longer defined by it. Several women have started new relationships with partners who understand their history and support their healing. It's funny, Delilah said during a recent call. Brendan thought he was collecting us, but really he brought together the strongest, most resilient women I've ever known. Last month, Cassandra called with news that felt like justice finally arriving. Brendan had been arrested for federal bigamy charges after one of his newer victims, a woman named Petra who'd found our support group through social media, pressed criminal charges. He's looking at 7 to 10 years, Cassandra reported, and Vivian's been charged as an accessory for her role in facilitating his crimes. The FBI investigation had uncovered even more disturbing details: bank accounts in multiple states, forged documents, identity theft, tax evasion, and what prosecutors called systematic relationship fraud designed to exploit vulnerable women for financial and emotional gain. Vivian's carefully constructed social facade had crumbled completely. Her membership in exclusive clubs was revoked, her charity board positions eliminated, and her social circle had abandoned her entirely. The woman who'd spent decades building a reputation as a pillar of Chicago society was now facing federal charges and social exile. Justice feels good, Cassandra said, even when it comes late. I agreed, though I knew the real justice was simpler than legal consequences. All of us had escaped. We'd found each other, supported each other through healing, and refused to let his lies define our futures or our children's lives. Sometimes I think about that baby shower and how different my life might have been if those brave women hadn't found the courage to tell me the truth. The shower had been meant to welcome me into Vivian's twisted system, but instead it became the moment I learned to trust my instincts and prioritize my daughter's well-being. I'll always be grateful they refused to let me become another casualty of Brendan and Vivian's sick game. Their intervention probably saved Hope from growing up in a household built on lies, watching her father disappear for mysterious business trips that were actually visits to his other families. Hope is napping now as I finish writing this, her small hand clutching a stuffed elephant Rebecca gave her. She'll grow up knowing her worth isn't determined by any man's attention. She'll know to trust her instincts when something feels wrong, even if everyone around her insists it's normal. Most importantly, she'll know that sometimes the most loving thing people can do is tell you the truth, even when it destroys everything you thought you knew about your life. The Thursday group taught me that real love doesn't require you to share it with multiple people in secret. It asks you to show up consistently for the people who matter most.